To prepare you for the DLC and Mesmer the Impaler, today we're going to go through the best spirit summons in Elden Ring. We're shrugging off the nerfs and the patch changes that have happened since launch. And I'll give you the best options for summons for any build to take with you. Let's go! Let me know in the comments your favorite spirit ashes, and for clarity, I did make a similar video back at the launch of Elden Ring, and I'm going to avoid talking about those same spirit summons just because I've already done it. So I will link that video here if you want to go and watch it, because like most of those are still good, but we're going to cover a completely different list here. So firstly, we'll cover everyone's favorite Mimic tier. Now, the Mimic tier is still great. Obviously, if you have a good build, like it is kind of dependent on your build a little bit, especially nowadays, because it does copy exactly what you have equipped at the time that you use it. Now, a good example of this, right, is if you have a status build up build, if you summon the Mimic tier, they can help you build up that status very quickly because they're going to use those same attacks as you. Now, this was nerfed in patch 1.03. It was decreased the amount of damage a spirit summon does when you use it, as well as changing its attack patterns to be a little less overly aggressive and just like absolutely destroying every boss in the game. So it's not as OP broken as it was, but it's still a very good Mimic tier depending on the build you're using it with, right? Like I think whereas at the launch of Elden Ring, you could essentially just always use the Mimic tier regardless of your build. Nowadays, it's a little dependent on making sure it's relevant to the build that you do have. In order to find the Mimic tier ashes, I would say to start from the Astral Woods site of Grace, which is in the Knight's Sacred Ground. Now from here, you want to jump down on the buildings and follow this path that I am leading you through. This will then lead you through to an inside of another building, and there will be a locked imp door here that you'll need to use a Stoneswood's key to unlock. Inside that door, just kill the enemy there, and in that chest, you will find the Mimic tier ashes. Omenkiller Rollo is a very good option for any bleed build. Any type of bleed build, or if you want a melee focused spirit summon, this is absolutely one that you should use. Now, it does have a high FP cost, so that is sort of the trade-off, but Rollo does an amazing amount of bleed damage with the two weapons that he holds in both hands, so he can actually do a bleed build-up and trigger hemorrhage on his own. He will also do like a fire, like flame breath attack every now and again as well. Really good option for bleed builds, and say if you want more of a melee-focused Ash of War that will be very hyper-aggressive, deal a lot of damage, and actually trigger that bleed status build up, especially if say you are also using bleed status, it's really good for that as well. Omenkiller Rollo is a bit of a trickier one to get. You will need to have at least gotten past Lindell Royal Capital, and then from the Forbidden Lands side of Grace, if you go back up the lift and head towards the Divine Tower of East Atlas, from there a little event will trigger here and the Fell Twins will spawn. You'll actually need to beat both of these Fell Twins, and then the Spirit Ashes will drop once you have done that. Ancient Dragon Knight Kristoff is next. Now, in my original video, I talked about a really good option of Lutal the Headless for any sort of tank build. Let's say you're playing a range build, you want sort of a melee character that can tank some hits and sort of take a lot of that aggression away from you. This is like maybe an endgame version of that, because Lutal the Headless is pretty easy to get sort of in the start of the game, and the Ancient Dragon Knight Kristoff takes a little bit more time, but does function in a very similar role for any sort of ranged builds, like whether you're using a bow or, you know, just any sort of intelligence or incantation based builds that you don't want to actually get close to enemies. This can help you have like pull that pressure off you, right? Like by having the Ancient Dragon Knight Kristoff, who has a massive shield that he will shield bash enemies with. He's also got a lance. Now he will use thunderbolt attacks from the lance as well, so he has a little bit of range potential there. He's not as versatile as the Headless because he can't like teleport like the Headless can, but he also does that like shockwave attack that I just can't remember the name of off the top of my head. I should have written it down, but you know, that like incantation where you like knock enemies away from you, that like shockwave effect. In order to get these Spirit Ashes, you will need to go to the Sainted Hero's Grave, which is near Lindell Royal Capital, and at the very end of this hero's grave, there is the Ancient Hero of Zamor boss, which you will need to defeat. Upon defeating him, the Spirit Ashes will drop, and you'll be able to pick up that bad boy. Redmane Knight Ogha is probably one of my favorite actually, and it's potentially the best ranged spirit summon in the game. Now, Ogha mostly fights with a gravity magic charged great bow shot, right? Now, he will also just use normal great bow shots, which is great. Say if you want a ranged option, someone that can sit in the back line and just like pepper off whatever the boss is while you focus them with either the magic shots or just the normal great bow. If he gets close to enemies, say if like you pull enemies close to him or they just get too close, he will pull out a sword and shield and basically be a typical Redmane knight and attack in that way. A couple of things here to note on top of that is that any roar that you use, say like war cry or something like that, he will mirror that effect and gain a damage buff, and he will do a rain of arrows attack using his gravity arrows once per summon, but you can get an additional effect from that. You'll increase his damage by triggering that. So any sort of build that uses roars, he's really good for that, but also any, you know, if you just want to have a ranged option, he's also fantastic as well for that. The other thing to note is that he will patrol an area. Like most summons will actually follow you, like you can summon them, whatever enemy they defeat, and then if you continue to move around, they will actually follow you, whereas Redmane Knight, Ogha, will actually stay at whatever that location is, and he'll just sort of like patrol around and attack anything that comes within like his radius, right? Like he is always aggressive, like he'll always attack whatever comes near him, but he will just patrol whatever that area that he is. You need to do a couple of things to unlock this Spirit Ashes. The first is to defeat Star Scourge Radahn, because the War Dead Catacombs is actually in that boss arena, in that massive arena where you fight Star Scourge Radahn. There is a catacombs right in the top corner. At the very end of those catacombs, you'll need to fight a Putrid Tree Spirit, and after defeating that spirit, the Spirit Ashes will drop for you there, and you'll be able to pick up the Spirit Ashes from that. The last one I've got for you is the Nightmaiden and Swordstress Puppets. Now, this is a really good offensive combo for a couple of reasons. One of them being that you get two sisters and they both have their own HP, which in a lot of situations can be very beneficial because they can sort of pincer enemies by attacking from different angles. You can attack from a third angle. It also, in some cases, will allow your Spirit Ashes to last a little bit longer because they both have separate health pools. They're also really good at, say, dodging and doing a pretty solid amount of damage on their own because there is two of them when they do get summoned. I've kind of like this option as just like a really good offensive variation. Like, you know, we've talked about, say, using a tank or like a ranged Spirit Ashes or ones that benefit from status build up. If you just want like a straight offensive focused spirit summons, then the Nightmaiden and Swordstress Puppets are both really good options for that because of those options. And they have those like Nox weapons, like the flowing sword, those things that, so they've got a little bit of range potential there just because you can get a bit of distance from those weapons when they do attack, but they're really great for that sort of a combo. And in terms of builds that you would use these for, they're great for any range builds like we've talked about with the tanks. If you didn't want to go the tank option, you could use these instead for any of those sort of range build setups. Or say if you're fighting any bosses or enemies that have multiple enemies, like, you know, there's some encounters where there are multiple bosses, having something like this that can just like take the pressure off you from that second boss, so you can focus on one, they can focus on the other. It's really beneficial to have. And that's the same for any of these like spirit summons, right? So the best use of spirit summons is to take pressure off you if there are two enemies in any boss fight or any encounter that you just need a little bit of help with the pressure, then they're really good for that. Now, the Nightmaiden and Swordstress Puppets are found in a locked chest down in Nokstella Eternal City, which again, you will have to have beaten Starscone Radahn to unlock the entrance to these Eternal Cities. And then once you get down here and work your way all the way down through into Nokstella, at the top section here, you'll need a Stoneswood key to unlock, defeat the Nightmaidens that are actually here, and then in a chest, you will then be able to pick up the Spirit Ashes. But let me know your favorite spirit summon in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.